Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah. I'm with the Midwest Writing Center, and this is a web series. For those who maybe haven't watched this series before, if you have, I guess you can fast forward the next 10 seconds. What's going to happen today is I'm going to talk about a topic. Then I'm going to give a update on the Midwest Writing Center, upcoming events, stuff like that. And then a writing prompt. The writing prompt will usually have to do with the topic of the day. Today it won't. Um, then sometimes I interview folks. It'll be the same, except that the interview will take place of the little topic guide. So let's get started. Last week, Ryan and I and lots of other people from around town had the opportunity to talk to high school students at Bettendorf about about the importance of learning to write well. And the idea of that was that the idea of that is that a good grasp on writing is important in really every career. And that's true. But I had already scheduled this video, which is on the versatile English major. But from that talk, which was really cool, and I will elaborate in a moment, I want to combine these concepts a little bit because, I'm somebody who works in the arts. I'm somebody for whom writing and reading and the compiling of messages and meaning is just particularly important. I think it's important to all of us. We all communicate in the world, but it's particularly important to me. And so I know that I seem or could seem like I have a pretty strong bias in that way. However, I didn't start out my career in the arts, first of all. And second of all, I am often assisting people who didn't spend time working on the clarity of meaning. And I did tell these students a few times, because there were a few classes actually, it wasn't like I was super repetitive, that I'm not great at just talking. And so I have, and it took me a long time to learn that. I have had to figure out how to sort of circumvent that and figure out how to make my meaning come across as effectively as possible when I know that speaking is not the best way for me to get my meaning across. Most of the time when we do communicate, it's with our voices. And that's not necessarily true for folks who don't use their voice. And I know certainly, I don't know, a third of my communication every day is via text message or instant message. But so that's why I want to clarify that communication is super, super, super important, but all forms of communication are not accessible for everyone. And so what's important about writing and having a good grasp on how to communicate via writing is that that's a skill that can be learned. Part of my problem may be that I have ADHD, and so I have a little less control over the words that come out of my mouth. I don't feel like it doesn't feel like impulse control, which is a symptom of ADHD, but that is really what it is. Like I don't always get to choose the words that come out. And so the message sometimes gets a little scrambled. A lot of the time, most of the time when I do these videos, I have notes. There have been a few times when I haven't, and that has always been a struggle. I just looked where my notes are supposed to be, and they're not there because they're on screen behind you. So, so the first thing is we'll talk about the panel and what I learned from the panel and what I feel like I want to pass on from that panel about why writing is important across all careers. There's one really special moment in which the host prompted students to come up with a career in which they do not use writing. And one of the students correctly said he is a line cook and he does not write at that job. And well, communication is super, super, super important and probably the most important thing in the restaurant industry. That particular job does not require a lot of writing. However, um, pretty much everything else in the restaurant does. For example, serving food, you have to write. Oftentimes, it's on a computer, so you can stick it in your memory and then put it into the computer, but you have to write down the meal and the notes about the meal correctly to communicate that to that line cook and the rest of the folks in the kitchen. And then also, if you want to be head cook or chef or manager of the restaurant, you're going to be doing a lot of writing. That includes communicating with vendors, that includes um, plans for the business itself, that includes interacting with the staff and writing schedules. And I know that writing schedules is oftentimes like a spreadsheet with numbers on it, but it does require written communication. And Ryan, our director at the center, reminded me, and he's a food guy, that in pop culture, in this moment in pop culture, we may be watching the show The Bear, and the office of that kitchen has gobs of books in it, and that is also accurate to every like business office I've ever been in, and that includes restaurants, because there's so much reference that needs to be done and things that need to be copied. So that was a really fun one for me to hear because that's true. That particular position does not involve a lot of writing, but everywhere else in a restaurant does, especially in that industry, especially in the 21st century when marketing is so big, especially, let me say especially a few more times, when we are trying to communicate why our thing. We need to be doing that via writing. Whether or not it ends up in writing, it starts in writing. That's true of like, well, all aspects of entertainment. We talk about that a lot at the Writing Center that, if you feel compelled to, or if you believe that like the arts are not, you wouldn't be watching this video if you had that thought, but you feel compelled to cut funding to the arts or don't think that like people shouldn't go to art school or whatever, like, but you do spend your downtime doing something. And what is it? Is it reading? Is it watching TV? Is it playing video games? Is it listening to music? Those are arts. And each of those things is written. I have loved talking to video game developers about the writing of their projects. A lot of it is, coding, which is also a language. Any, they're called languages. Any coding language is a language, but it's also, you have to learn a language to do it. And that is the coding language, but we don't think about that as writing for whatever reason. Maybe it's because we're outside of it. But there's also story involved. Oh, also like any kind of game, pretty much. Like, where are you getting the rules? Where are you getting the premise? Anyway, the line cook comment I found it to be so rich with big picture elements. Some of the other folks who were on the panel, I'm going to tell you like what their careers are. We had a graphic designer, we had a real estate agent, we had a screenwriter. We had a police officer. We had, a director of a library. So properly a librarian, yes, but managing libraries is not quite the same. Also, there are like 70 kinds of librarians. I was going to say 12, but it is a huge number of like librarian specialties and kinds of librarianism. Librarianism. What else did we have? We had a teacher and we had somebody in charge of, did I say graphic designer already? We had somebody in charge of communications for school district, and me and Ryan. Ryan and I were did not serve on the same panels. But I didn't start out in the arts. I started out in social work, and then I went to academia before I ended up where I am today. And in social work, and I'm just going to speak from my experience because it's the one I know best. In social work, it's everything. We first, in my position in which I worked in housing for unhoused youth, we had to create schedules for our kiddos, um, which I'm not supposed to call them kiddos. I'm sorry, everyone. They were teenagers. um, Schedules for like activities, and we also had to defend them. Lots and lots of email communication. That's with like care teams, so like teachers, social workers, case managers, family, DHS, juvenile court, whatever. Then we had to write reports every single day on every single person we cared for and about them as a group. And there are different skills involved in each of these things. I'm going to be a little more emotional when I'm talking. I'm going to use more colorful, emotional language, not colorful like swear words, but personable language when I'm talking to a care team than, or when I'm like appealing to. One time I took my clients to like an acrobat show, and I wrote an email to the people who ran that place and asked them for free tickets. So I had to be, a little more sympathetic, a little more personable in that email than I would in the report. The report is basically not allowed to have adjectives because everything has to be totally objective. I heard a bit of that from the police officer as well, that he had to learn really um, how to write those reports. And, depending on the situation you're writing about, it can be long. Um, I also, created in those situations something very similar to lesson plans, which is like, how do I defend the activity we're doing with like the approach of people's well-being in mind? Which lesson plans are really similar to that. I feel like people always hear, and this is gonna overlap a bit. You're an English major, so therefore you're going to be um, you're going to be a teacher, right? Or you're going to be an editor. There's another thing. There are lots of different kinds of editors in the world. And then there's copywriting, which is different from a copyright, which is different from copy editing. And it requires some very specific skills, depending on what kind of editing you're doing, which are, to my knowledge, not taught to most English majors, which is cool. There are programs that do that. And it is, I think, an important skill set to have, knowing some editing skills, because that helps with clarity too. That's a side topic. Um, when I when I was in academia, almost everything was writing an email. Oop, swerve. Okay. So I've been in academia in a nonprofit. I've worked with underserved youth in nonprofits. Most of my life has been in nonprofits, and I'm currently in a nonprofit. And something really major to all of those things, just nonprofits really, but also to artists in general, is grant writing. And that is like a really heavy duty combination of that, like really straightforward, dry, maybe procedural writing where you're saying like X is X is X is X. Um, Here is the facts of the situation. And you have to get pretty you have to be evocative. You have to make whoever's reading this application, because they are reading so many grant applications, care about your topics. You have to be able to appeal to emotions, which again is a skill, and it can be taught. And it can be learned. And then of course grant reporting. You receive the grant and you have to say, thank you, here's what we did with it. And you have to, and you'll want to include like anecdotes, how the impact is made, what impact do you want to make. And that's not easy. That's a can I say it again? That's a skill. And that's something too that I saw across several of the folks in different careers who were on that panel have to write grants. Even the woman who runs a real estate firm, she's also a real estate agent, had worked in nonprofit and said that was a skill that really crossed beautifully and was really helpful to her. I also added, like, when I said a few times I've had every job, and that's not true, but I've had a lot of them. When I was a barista, it wasn't just like taking orders, which is writing. It's like I said with servers, but like there's a lot of being able to defend an expense that goes along in all jobs. An expense or like an activity has to be defended. And a lot of this stuff, especially in nonprofits, is like the lesson plan thing that I was saying. We're doing X to see Y result, which is important because. And you'll see that in retail, and you'll see that in food service, and you'll see that in social work, and you'll see that in nonprofits, and you'll see it in academia. Now, I want to give academia a moment because when I say academia, I mean higher ed, I mean colleges, but you see it in secondary education as well, especially with like the funding cuts that we see all over the place in education. Teachers have to be able to um, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Turn that off. Teachers have to be able to defend their stuff too, which is very unfortunate. Um, I mean, you know, that's how lesson plans are written, but also like if you want to do something new and different for your students or your classroom. Um, so then I wanted to transition a bit into what are some like pretty common or useful things that we see for English majors. And I want to add that we know that this is the wrong browser window. And I will cite my source later when we get to me posting this, that English majors are the most employed of college majors of degrees, and that is for a reason. It's because when you study English, you learn a few things. One is close reading, which is looking for um, what is said, the meaning inside the words. So we've got a like a bare bones sentence, and when we add 20 sentences together, we get a picture. And what does that mean? So it's not, I wouldn't say it's not so much what your it is what your high school English teacher is trying to get at. But it's not necessarily like, what does this color mean? Unless that color comes up a lot in a very specific context. Then you do have signals for what that means. Maybe I should do a video on close reading. Um, but that works all over the place because it's a form of critical thinking, and it is something that isn't taught in every area of study, and it can be really, really useful. So we see a lot of English majors going into going to law school. There are a lot of technical writers who have English degrees. That technical writing would be like writing for catalogs or instruction manuals, which are like people are always hiring for these things. Um, Writing for companies, like big companies, probably small companies too, for like whatever information they need to be put out in the world. A lot of people with English majors are in marketing, because they know how to manipulate language and how to read language for a deeper meaning. So if marketing would be like selling things, but also a lot of the time it's social media. Um, Marketing and PR are are an overlap, but PR, meaning public relations, can be a little different. Usually someone who does marketing, um, usually someone who does marketing will do public relations as well, but someone whose job is in public relations doesn't necessarily do marketing. That would be if you're with a company that is outward facing, or works with a lot of clients, or works with the public, or has a reputation, then you have a staff who deals with relating with the public. That is also sometimes called public affairs, which is a department I've worked in before. um, and then again, that is doing the interactions with the public. It'll mean different things for different companies or organizations. When I did community organizing. So I got people together with, shared ideals and looked at what we can do together to make a difference. A lot of it will also be like where you get experience and what you care about personally. So when I was in college, I did a lot of work in education nonprofits. So it was really easy for me to just continue into social work because the more I worked with these nonprofits and in education and with youth, the more I knew my niche was less about the kids in school and more about the kids who weren't going to school. That was a really easy transition for me. And then when I left social work, I was like, okay, maybe we'll do a video on resume building. What are my transferable skills here? And a lot of it was I can talk to people from different backgrounds. And that made me really marketable. Um, yeah. Um, let's see. Event planning is it sounds kind of crazy, but event planning is all about organizational writing, being able to make a plan and and not remember details, but document details and, mark off things that are happening there. There's also project management, which can mean different things for different companies and organizations, but it goes along with event planning in that it's what it sounds like. It's planning a project, but it can be, or managing a project, but it can mean so many different things because that project could be an event, but it also could be like a 3-year plan to build something. Yeah, it really, really depends. Um, I do know a lot of English majors who ended up in coding, and part of that is because they kind of get how language works. Um, there's also, I mean, just across the arts, there's a lot of um, like it's an easy transition across the arts. And so really anything you interact with can work out. Um, I've known a lot of English majors who get into stage management, which makes more sense for a theater major. Sometimes they're the same major, depending on the program you're in. Film and or theater can often be under the English umbrella. And what's cool about stage management with an eye toward reading and writing is that you're taking a text and figuring out how to convey its message visually. Um, this is, of course, I'm thinking about plays specifically, but there are other kinds of stage management for things that are not plays. Um, you've got the text and you've got the actors and you've got a director. You have to make everything else work. And that's difficult. I don't I don't know how they do it. I've seen them do it. Um, I would say also I've known folks with English degrees who go into well, I think I said management, but that is such a broad word. Who go into things like either managing retail, which is a very specific task and not an easy one, or managing nonprofits. And I'm thinking like humane societies. I'm thinking obviously literary orgs. Um, and I was gonna say another animal shelter. But then there's, like the United Way. So much. And my bias is in nonprofits because it's where I've spent most of my time as an adult. But so much of it is being able to write a message. Um, thank you is a huge thing. You need to be able to say thank you in a big way. You need to be able to really quickly explain why you matter over and over and over again in different ways all the time. I wanted to say and had forgotten because I keep scrolling down my list and not pausing. Folks in radio and television, obviously journalism. But like podcasts are so hot right now, and anyone can do that. And ditto YouTube and TikTok, but those involve scripts. Those involve reading, research. documenting and writing. So even if you're not using a script, like me, I use notes. It has to be written. You have to have an understanding of the things that you're going to say. Um, I feel like I am getting a little starting to go in circles. I would love to hear your thoughts, your feelings about it. I about how, how writing has helped you or hindered you, and what maybe you see folks with English degrees doing. I'm not necessarily advocating that everybody go. I want to be clear. I'm not advocating that everyone go to higher ed. It's not for everyone. But if you do, it's not a dead major. Um, I did remember a couple of things from the power of reading, um, that I have seen that have surprised me. And one was, I took my microwave in to get fixed because I didn't want to buy a new one. And the gentleman who repaired it told me that a lot of his job is finding and reading relevant old repair manuals, or like the like abstract for how the appliances are built. And a lot of it is documenting what he did so that other people can do it, because it does not exist. Because people don't want stuff to get fixed. They want more stuff. And the other thing is gardening, and maybe not gardening. Yes, gardening, but gardening and so um you may or may not know, have been looking into farming, and more specifically gardening. And what I have seen is folks who have to document what happens. So it's like, farmers almanacs exist, and they're like, here's what we expect this year to look like, season by season, month by month, week by week. Folks who have their own gardens have to document those weather changes and what it is doing to their garden and their plants, and how they responded, so that they can look at it next year and know what went right, what went wrong, and how to use it to move forward. And that was one that I found really interesting, because I did a lot of reading, because that's the way I learned best. I know a lot of people learn on YouTube, and I just zone out. um and so then, talking to the folks at the farmers market, um that came up over and over again. um yeah, so there's some information on why writing is good and fun and useful. So I'm going to give you some updates on the Midwest Writing Center. Oh, I do have my planner near me. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope this was useful. I don't know, maybe you'll share it with folks who are feeling disenfranchised by their love of English, who want to follow their passion, and everyone around them is telling them that it's useless. I knew I wanted to be an English major, and a lot of people were like, what are you going to do with that? And I did not have an answer, but I didn't care that much either. All right, what's coming up at the Midwest Writing Center? Today we have our in-person youth writing workshop. That's at 5:30 p.m. at the Midwest Writing Center. So that's the ground floor of the Rock Island Public Library, downtown branch, next to the children's section. We're inviting writers 15 to 19 years old to come hang out with their peers, get some writing done, and get some workshopping done. It is invaluable to have somebody there to critique your work, help you get better. And it's a really, really beautiful environment. This weekend, October 19th and 20th, we will be at Iowa City Book Fest. The 19th is the book fair, so you'll find us there slinging books, talking about contests, doing fun writing things. And then on Sunday, I will be on a panel about publishing. You can come see me. Both of those are at Merge in downtown Iowa City. Next week. Okay, sorry. I thought I was on the wrong page of my calendar. Y'all didn't want to hang out and watch me say that, but here we are. Next week, we'll be meeting with John Hagar from the Galvin Fine Arts Center at St. Ambrose University, and we're going to talk, that's me and him on this program. We're going to talk about our new collaboration. So last year we put out a beautiful anthology of works written exclusively by Quad Cityans about radical hospitality. This year the theme is being human in the age of AI. So he and I are going to talk about that, about this project and about the topic and how that can be really rich for art. And also you can get $100 for submitting. You can get $100 if you're chosen for publication. And then there will be performances, chances to win more money. It's going to be the coolest. It was last year anyway. Then also next week, I'm going to be talking with publisher Steve Semkin from Ice Cube Press. He's somebody I see at book events all the time, and I've never gotten to sit down with him and talk to him about Ice Cube Press, the books he puts out, why he got into publishing, etc. And then that night, Thursday, October 24th, is our next Spectra reading series event. Our headliner is Gina Franco. She wrote the book The Accidentals. It's poetry. It is phenomenal. I wish that I had it here to hold up and show you. And she'll be reading with Zafira Hassan and Melissa Conway, who are both really, really incredible poets. And also at 6 p.m., there will be a community write-in. She's going to teach a totally free writing workshop or writing class, 6 o'clock at Roz Talks before the show. It's about belonging and existing in this world is going to be the focus. It's going to be really, 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 really beautiful. That's where I will leave you today for our upcoming events. I know that was only 2 weeks of events, but it's a big 2 weeks. Hope to see you next Wednesday. And today's writing prompt, hold on, I have it up. I sure don't have it up. However it comes out, set 5 minutes on your timer, however it comes out, journal, poetry, prose, whatever it is, totally wonderful. I would love for you to write about, and this is coming from a workshop we held this weekend that just passed. Write about a place that you have a really, really strong visual memory of, or sensory memory of. So not a place where you are currently, but somewhere where you have really strong sensory memory from the past. Thanks for hanging out with me. And as always, please write more light into your life.